Hello, welcome to Jim Creates. This is video 4 of our video series on making maple syrup. And today we're going to boil some syrup. I like to start by getting fresh sap from my pan because I never really want to start a fire under an empty pan. It will warp it. And the pans are expensive. It's a fairly straightforward process. You dip and pour. And you put the lid back on your containment area. Pick up your pails and ambulate out to your evaporator. Now when you're pouring in the sap, it pays to be a little bit gentle. The bottom of the pan is quite thin actually for best heat transfer. And what I did there was just dumped it in, and I don't usually do that. Now you can see at the end of the pan there's a little bit of a line towards the bottom. And that line is a 2-inch mark. That tells me there's about 8 gallons of sap in the pan. And it's about 2 inches of sap total in the pan, which is good because we want between 1.5 inches to 2 inches for best boil and evaporation rate. Any thicker than that or any deeper than that, and we'll end up just wasting time. You can see there I have a pre-warming pan on the top of the main pan, and that basically allows me to match the amount of sap being added to my evaporation rate so I never kill my boil. Now we're going to grab some wood and make some kindling, and I want to talk a little bit about wood. You should always use a little bit of a hardwood and softwood mix. If you try to use just straight hardwood or straight softwood, you'll end up with either way too hot of a fire if you use just softwood, that burns fast, and if you just use hardwood, you end up with a ton of charcoal in the bottom of your evaporator, and it doesn't like to burn up completely, so you want to burn a nice mix. That's about time to make a fire in the evaporator now that we have our pan filled and ready to go. And it's just a straightforward process to get your tinder and your kindling and build your fire from the bottom up. You notice the fire bricks inside the evaporator here, those play a huge role in keeping heat inside the evaporator. And not just for safety's sake, but because they hold the heat into the evaporator and increase the efficiency. Without them, you probably wouldn't get as fast of evaporation rate. So they're very important to this evaporator. Yeah, before you know it, you'll have a nice cheery fire going, and pretty soon after that, the evaporation starts. This was about maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes later, and we've already got some steam rising. Here, I just wanted to fill up the pre-warmer pan with extra sap. And that's where I'm going to add sap for the entirety of the boil. And we'll match, you'll see in a little bit here, we'll match the evaporation rate with our addition rate, so the boil never dies. If you dumped sap in raw from the pan, it would kill the boil each time, and it would have to bring the temperature back up on the whole pan every time. Here I am just adding more wood. This was about 5 minutes in. You can see it goes through the wood pretty fast. The wood is always chopped down to about wrist-sized pieces if I can get it to that point. This seems to be the best as far as getting a nice, hot, fast-burning fire, which is what you need to boil 8 gallons of sap constantly. Here we are about 10 minutes in, and you can see we're starting to simmer pretty well. Steam is starting to rise, and we're on our way to a nice boil. Here's a nice look at the thermometer. This is a unique thermometer. It actually reads 0 at the boiling point of water. And our target temperature is that 7 mark because that is when maple sap turns into syrup, about 7 degrees above the boiling point of water. Here we are about 15 minutes in. We got a good boil going. Got to hit the fire one more time here. Until those fire bricks warm up, you keep losing quite a bit of heat. Once the fire bricks warm up, you don't have to fire up or stoke up the fire as often. Now we got a good boil going. I'm going to open up the valve here on this pre-warming pan and just try to guesstimate at first where our evaporation rate is. I can use the sight glass on the side of my pan to see if I'm losing or gaining on the evaporation rate. Here you can kind of see the sight glass, and there we're at 0, so we know we're boiling. Here's a quick look at the guy wires I was talking about. I didn't get them in the last video, but pretty important because if you don't have them, the stack can fall over. And there you go. That's just rinse and repeat from here out. Sit down, take a break between firings and between adding sap to the pan, pet a cat, whatever might come along. This cat's name is Otter. She's been around the farm forever, and unfortunately she got in a fight with something and it ripped her face open. She's going to have a big scar over top of her eye, and she's still a good cat, but I won't be able to trust her if I'm being run down by a bunch of wildebeests in a stampede or something. But that's just the way it goes, I guess. Here we can see we actually have a good boil going. I wanted to be able to show this, so I let the fire burn down a little bit, and you can see the sap dribbling in at the rate of evaporation. If I hadn't put the fire down a little bit, you wouldn't be able to see anything at all. The steam would just be crazy. It was about lunchtime, and I decided to just use the heat that I have inside the evaporator to cook up some sausage here and have a little lunch outside, enjoy the simple things, you know. Yep. Yep, a little kielbasa and wheat bread, some homemade sauerkraut, and a cup of coffee, yeah. It's nice when you're out making maple syrup because it sort of forces you to slow down and enjoy the simple things. You really can't walk away from the fire, the pan, the sap, any of it, because it can flash boil, it can boil over, it can foam up. There's so many different things that can happen. And if you go inside to cook yourself lunch and stay in there for too long, your fire can go out. Or like I say, it can boil over, and that's no fun at all. So I have to be vigilant. Yeah, I'm just going to sit down and enjoy a little bit of lunch, watch the fire, and monitor the sap level and add wood and add sap as needed. Here I'm putting some water in a pail because we've run out of sap at this point in the day. And you don't want to run your pan dry, or you'd want to have water on hand basically, because your sap can flash boil as you're running out. And you need to have some sort of liquid so that you don't scorch the syrup in the bottom of the pan. If it flash boils, you can always dump a little bit in. You can see we're still at 0. On the thermometer, we're at about 2 inches on the sight glass, which means that we've got 8 gallons in the pan. Now at sometime later, I boiled it down quite a bit, and I think we're at about 3/4 of an inch in the pan, which means we've got about 2 to 3 gallons of sap in the bottom of the pan. And the fire is pretty much out at this point. Still quite a bit of heat in the fire box because of the fire brick, but we're definitely trying to just get that fire down as far as we can, because I'm about to remove the pan and I don't want a whole bunch of cinders and ashes and stuff flying up in my face and into the syrup. You know, yeah, when you're by yourself, you have to be very careful with this because it's pretty heavy and awkward, and that sap is boiling hot yet. But we made it onto the sawhorses successfully. Here's a good look at the spigot that I'm about to open. Releases the sap out of the pan and through the filter. That's an Orlon filter that I get from a guy locally. You can get them online. You can get them from Smoky Lake. And so that Orlon filter has a pre-filter inside of it that filters out the large particulate that's going to come out of the pan. Because when you boil sap, it makes a product called sugar sand, which is basically what's left over. Or I shouldn't say that. It's a byproduct of the boiling process. It's all the minerals and like sugar particles and stuff that float to the bottom. Yeah, you got a nice view of that. Yep, so there you can see that brown line. That's the sugar sand. But I think with that it's going to about wrap things up. There's a nice view of the tripod. And yeah, well, thank you for watching. If you like what you see, don't be afraid to subscribe, like, leave some comments, and I'll see you next time.